Okay, so everybody knows that you have this fight or flight response inside of your body that controls stuff such as adrenaline being the primary factor that makes you much stronger when this fight or flight response activates than when it is not active. So today I decided to make a video on how exactly we could optimize our adrenaline, get the most strength output at one moment, get a huge fight or flight response on command when we want it. So basically, you don't have to be stronger than somebody else to produce more force. You just understand how to utilize the strength that your body is capable of. For example, it's a known fact that we can't access all our muscle fibers. So using this, we're going to be able to access more muscle fibers on command than other people. A great example of this is Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall had to be hypnotized before hitting his deadlift because you can't access all your muscle fibers unless you're in an extreme circumstance. So by being hypnotized, Eddie Hall was able to hit a huge PR. Now, we aren't going to go that far. We're going to do things that you can easily do in your everyday life, but let's get straight into it and not waste any of your time. I want to say none of this is medical advice. Talk to your doctor first before taking any of my advice. So, how exactly does accessing true strength work? Humans can only use about 30 to 40% of their muscle fibers in normal, everyday circumstances. So, if you're washing the dishes, turning your head, simple things like that, you don't want to have excess energy output from using all of your muscles. So what this is doing is it's allowing our body to conserve resources. The reason we have this is so we don't have to break down too much muscle and then spend the time repairing that. We need more food if we are doing that. Humans would go extinct if we needed all of the food from using all of our muscle fibers at every single moment at a time. So that is the reason we do not use it, and it just is a waste of excess energy. But your fight or flight response could jump your ability to use muscle fibers by 20%. So when this is active, you're using 20% more muscle fibers. So like I said, this video is going to allow you to access strength that you didn't know you had before because we are maximizing the amount of muscle fibers you are using through this fight or flight response. Now remember, I said 20% for your complete fight or flight response, and you're already getting some sort of flight or fight response every time you train. So this isn't going to boost your strength by 20%. It's going to boost it by maybe 5%, 10% top. But the key is this is going to make you stronger on command. That could be the difference between hitting a PR and not hitting it. Just because you watched one video, you have this for the rest of your life. So I strongly recommend you remember and take notes on this video because you will be using it in your future. To help you understand in a second how exactly accessing a certain amount of muscle fibers works so you can understand the rest of the video, let's go through a quick explanation of motor units. So you have slow motor units, you have fast fatigable motor units, and you have slow fast fatiguing motor units. Now, slow motor units control about 180 muscle fibers. These are for more precise movements such as moving my hand, moving my head, turning it around, moving my lips. All of these things are controlled by slow motor units. They fatigue much slower. They're much more fatigue resistant, but the downside is they're only contracting about 180 muscle fibers at once, or they have control, and they require more signals to access more muscles. Therefore, you can't access as many of your muscle fibers in these areas. Now, you can optimize your body to have much more fast fatigable motor units. What these do are they're fibers that can access between 1,000 and 2,000 muscle fibers from one signal to them. So these are going to allow you to be much stronger because you are accessing much more of your muscle fibers. The downside to these is they fatigue very easy. The more of these you have, the more fatigue you're going to develop. And finally, there's slow, fast fatiguing motor units. What these are, they're the in-between. They don't fatigue super quickly, but they do fatigue, and they contract sort of an in-between area amount of muscle fibers. So basically, why are these important? Every single one of these motor units to contract the muscles, your central nervous system needs to send signals to them. Depending on the state of your body, the amount of neural drive you get, adrenaline, many factors allow you to contract more or less of them. What we're doing is maximizing the amount you can contract, and we are also, depending on your needs, you can choose to maximize the amount of slow motor units or the amount of fast fatigable motor units. Just the other day, when I was on vacation, my grandpa was asking me, why don't you do like 100 push-ups or something? Why don't you sit here doing some sort of body weight workout to stay in shape for powerlifting? Now, my response to him was very similar to this right here. Now, I kept in mind that you don't lose muscle for 3 weeks. You only lose motor patterns. Now, if I'm doing push-ups, I'm not helping motor patterns. I'm only going towards building muscle. Now, the downside to this is what I'm doing is I'm optimizing my body to have more slow motor units. So in powerlifting, I'm not going to be able to exert as much force when I get back because of that. Me not training in this case was actually superior in the strength aspect because it was under 3 weeks. Because I didn't lose any muscle and I kept the motor units that I have optimized my body for. So keep in mind, strength is very specific. Whatever you are training for, you want to stick to that. You don't want to be bouncing around. You want to choose one specific category and stick to that, and maybe over time transition instead of just an immediate jump, because you do have the advantage of whatever motor units your body has at the very moment. Now I'm going to get pretty in depth on what exactly your adrenal glands are, how they work, and what they do. So your thoracolumbar is where your nervous system leaves your spinal cord. So this is your spinal cord. Your thoracolumbar is breaking out into your adrenal glands. Now, when your fight or flight response activates your sympathetic nervous system, this causes your thoracolumbar to go ahead and bind to your adrenal glands, like I said. So when it binds to your adrenal glands, it brings ions to them. Now, these ions promote the production of epinephrine, which I'll go through the chain in a second. So it promotes the production of epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, aka our goal to release as much adrenaline as possible inside of our body. Okay, so now that the ions are there, we need to go through the conversion chain. The conversion chain starts at tyrosine. So you take tyrosine, and that tyrosine is converted to L-DOPA. That L-DOPA produces dopamine. People don't know that dopamine is a prerequisite to adrenaline. Now that dopamine is converted to norepinephrine, and then finally the norepinephrine is converted to epinephrine. Phenethyl converts the last step, so norepinephrine to epinephrine. So this is important. DMAE, DMAA we'd talk about in a second. These are in the same family, so it forces this conversion and you get more adrenaline release. I'll talk about that more in a second when I talk about the things you can do. So this process repeats and keeps occurring until your adrenal glands are full of adrenaline or epinephrine. So once this is full, the overflow is released into the areas of our body. There's a few areas. In the liver, it stimulates glucose production, so higher blood glucose means we're going to have more energy, which means a higher power output. So that's one of the important parts of adrenaline. It spikes your blood glucose. The next thing is it triggers your fat cells to oxidize and break down into fatty acids, which are used to break down into ATP. So ATP supports your contractions. It really is going to help your endurance. So it's going to help you not get fatigued on your warm-ups when you're lifting. It's going to help you not get fatigued after your top set. If you're running, it's going to help you run longer. So there's a lot of benefits of this. But keep in mind, for endurance, this may not be the best because there is always a crash afterwards. So if you need this for too long of a period of time, then you will start seeing downsize. but it also increases the rate your heart pumps blood. More energy, more nutrients going throughout your body. It shuts down your digestion so your blood could go elsewhere. You don't want your blood in your stomach, you want it in the muscles you are using for whatever workout or exercise you are doing. It's going to cause you to have increased airflow. You're going to start breathing hard. You notice if you do a single heavy rep, even if it's just one rep, you'll be breathing hard likely afterwards if you got that adrenaline response. This is why. It's not because you're fatigued, it's because your body is increasing the amount of oxygen or airflow going to your heart so it could pump harder. It also enhances your neural drive, which is possibly the most important part of adrenaline. What does enhanced neural drive mean? Enhanced neural drive means you're going to gain speed and efficiency of neural signals. So you're going to be able to send more neural signals to more motor neurons so you can contract more muscle fibers. Therefore, you're going to produce a stronger strength output. That is the main goal we are going for here. The other stuff benefits you, but ultimately we are trying to get access to as many muscle fibers as possible right now. So enhancing neural drive is a big thing we're about to focus on. So now let's get into how exactly you can maximize your fight or flight response. So first question you may be asking, can you do this consistently? And my response is sort of. So adrenal fatigue does not exist. Your adrenals cannot get fatigued as long as you have the resources that I mentioned earlier. You're not depleted in tyrosine in your body. So adrenal fatigue does not exist, but what does exist is central nervous system fatigue. I'll go over this in a second. It'll be more complicated than simply when you do this, you get fatigued, because you could get your central nervous system fatigued without doing this. So I'll explain that in a second when I'm going over the points. Now, some of you may be wondering, is this bad for my heart? Is this bad for my health? Yes and no, not at all. Yes, it's bad for your heart, and yes, it's good for your heart. It just depends on how your body reacts to it and how you implement it. So having high blood pressure, extremely high blood pressure, is actually very good for you for a short period of time, assuming you don't spike it too high or you have any health consequences, such as a heart attack, stroke, whatever. So you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to go to that extent. But what is important to note is if you do have it in a prolonged period of state, if you can't get your body to calm down or go back to a parasympathetic state rather than its sympathetic state, then that's when you are going to start having issues. So if you notice you're not able to sleep the night after this, then that is probably what's going on. You're probably stuck in a sympathetic state, which means you need to either find ways to calm down and actually help your body rest, which is normally the best option, or you could just avoid this in general because your body, or however you are approaching it, is not the correct way. But once again, short periods of time of high blood pressure is very good for your heart. So if you maximize this response, your body could possibly increase the adrenaline in your blood by 50 times. That's how much it could increase in extreme situations. So there is a large gap between getting no response and getting this response. So first, I want to talk about the Wim Hof method or any similar styles of breathing that cause you to inhale more than you exhale. Like I said earlier, breathing is a response from adrenaline. Now, on the other hand, when you are doing that form of breathing, it's going to activate your fight or flight response. So what I'm saying is you don't have to be some nerd. Hold up, let me pull up my Wim Hof breathing video before I go for this PR. But what you can do is try to extend your inhale for about half a second longer than your exhale every time. And keep doing this for a couple minutes, just while you're getting ready, while you're resting before your last warm up. And what this is going to do is this is going to really optimize your body getting into that state. Now imagine you're stepping into a cold shower. One of the common things people are trying to do when they get in a cold shower is to try to not breathe hard, control their fight or flight response, not panic, try to keep their body completely calm. Now think of the breathing when you step in. That's normally how people think of it, whether they could control it. The breathing you do when you step in an ice cold shower or jump in an ice bath, that is what you are trying to mimic. More inhaling than exhaling, and that is how you are going to get the best response out of your breathing method. My next thing I'm going to say is to find something that really bothers you. People say, oh, don't do this because it's bad for your mental state, things like that. But I think if you could control your mind on command, that's going to be a lot better than having these things pop up when you don't want it. So I'd say use this adrenaline, use the cortisol rush from these to go ahead and get into the zone and hit a PR. Cortisol and adrenaline go hand in hand. So if you think about it, if something releases cortisol, it's also going to be releasing adrenaline. If something releases adrenaline, it's also going to be releasing cortisol. That's something I'd take a note on because maybe there's something that I forget to mention or didn't think of for this video that you can actually do because you know, oh, this increases my stress levels. This is going to increase my adrenaline. Now, you don't want chronic stress levels. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying things that increase it on command in the very moment. So stuff like the forbidden pre-workout, your girl breaking up for you, actually is good for the gym. It's not a joke. It's actually a serious thing that actually does work. The next thing I'm going to mention is smelling salts. Now, I'd be careful about using these. Do your own research first. I'm not going to talk about all the downsides because that's not what this video is about. I personally think they are fine to use to an extent. Don't go crazy with them. But what they are doing is they're forcing you to get excess oxygen into your brain. Therefore, you're going to have an enhanced neural drive. So having more oxygen in your brain is because when you inhale the ammonia gas, it irritates your nose and lungs and forces an involuntary inhalation that you can't get without using these. So you have more oxygen to your brain than you would without these, or just by normally increasing your inhalation rate through something like the Wim Hof method. This is the more extreme version of that, and you could even combine them to get an even bigger adrenaline rush. The next thing you could do is slap yourself or slap your thighs because it mimics injuries or getting hit, so it spikes your cortisol and causes a huge adrenaline rush. So when you slap your thighs, that is where you actually have the most nerve endings that you can hit in one area. So that's why I hit my thighs specifically, and it doesn't sting that bad because you have the adrenaline going. You don't feel as much pain. So go ahead, slap your thighs like crazy. It should sting a bit, but it will get a huge adrenaline release. It's one of my favorite methods. Now, you guys are going to think I look like some psychopath off TikTok in the gym when I add this, but you could do both of these. You could be slapping, and my next thing is yelling. You could do both of these, like, doo, doo, ah! There's a few moments of noise to hit a PR. I don't give a shit, but I'm going to say yelling is the next thing that triggers an adrenaline rush. I mean, you could imagine why this actually works. Going into battle, people would scream, ah, all this stuff. So just naturally, based off our history, yelling is associated with some sort of traumatic or fighting event. So when you yell, you're going to get this adrenaline rush. And one other thing is grunting during your lift is good because when you exhale, your physical outputs are increased. So grunting is the best way to force that exhale. When lifters did this in a study, it increased their strength by about 7% compared to when they were not doing it. So this is a pretty notable difference. And then music could also be a thing. Maybe you're not too good at getting in your head, but then you could throw in some music and you could really listen to what exactly the music is is saying, the music's loud. Like I said, the yelling is associated with some sort of battle or some sort of traumatic event back in the day. So if you have loud music playing in your ear, you're going to get this huge adrenaline rush. Next thing I have is the atmosphere. Make sure you bring buddies to that stuff. Call over some people. Yo, bro, want to hit me? See me hit my first 225 bench? Hype me up, bro. Like, if you have good boys, if you have good homies in the gym, they should all be ready to come over and hype you up. If you don't have anybody like that, you're in the wrong gym, because random people come over, start talking about me. Oh my God, dude, are you about to hit that? Like, yeah, you should be getting that on a consistent basis. You should be completely fine, confident enough. It's not weird at all, I assure you. I mean, you could just think about why atmosphere is important. When there's a lot of people watching you, in most cases, that means there's a lot on the line. So the more that's on the line, the more of this response you're going to get, because the more it impacts your life. My next thing is goal setting. Set goals way in the future, a year down the line. Set things that you can't see yourself hitting anytime soon. And when you work towards something for a year straight and you keep preparing for this, maybe you sign up for a powerlifting competition in 6 months. Compared to when you sign up for it, I'm going to do a powerlifting competition in a week. The 6-month prep is going to be a much bigger deal inside of your mind when you are in that moment. You're going to be thinking, I spent all this time for this moment. Not just 1 week, I spent 6 months. So your body is going to have much greater neural drive in this moment. You're going to get a huge fight or flight response. So set goals way in the future. Think about your future self, not just your current self. Now, I want you to remember the very first ingredient in the chain that gets you to produce adrenaline. It's tyrosine. Now, many pre-workouts have small doses of tyrosine, but you want to look for a pre-workout with a very high dosage. I take, in my pre-workout, 10,000 milligrams of this. May not be to the healthy point, but I only take that on special occasions. And then L-Dopa is another good thing in pre-workout. Don't need it, but it's something else to look for, something that's positive. And remember dimethylamine, something earlier that I said converts your norepinephrine to epinephrine. Now, this is super important because DMAE and DMAA are in the same family as this. So if you buy a pre-workout with either of these supplements, DMAE you could find in stores. DMAA is blacklisted, so you have to buy that online. But these are both completely natty, just so you know. But what exactly they're doing is they're forcing your body to convert norepinephrine to epinephrine. And when this is forced, you're going to get a bigger response than your body wants to produce, which is pretty good if you want to have that response. That's why you take a pre-workout with this and you have a massive crash afterwards. So be aware, a massive crash is a consequence of taking this. And then dopamine optimization. Dopamine optimization is super important because I mentioned it in the tree. Now, when you have high baseline levels of dopamine, this is going to be much easier for your body to go through this process. I have a video to optimize your dopamine levels. It's actually very in-depth. There's many other benefits of dopamine, not what this video is about, but you could just search my channel and then add dopamine at the end in the search bar, and you'd find it if you are interested in that. This next one is for those who aren't as interested in endurance and more so interested in maximal output at one moment, and that is optimizing your body to have more fast twitch muscle fibers. Fast twitch muscle fibers are going to make you more explosive. Having fast twitch muscle fibers is going to make the muscles that you contract, your motor neurons contract, much more powerful because fast twitch contracts harder than a slow twitch. Downside again is makes you fatigue quicker. Okay, now I'm getting into your central nervous system, something that is extremely important, something that powerlifters are super focused on because it does have a strong impact. So it's important to have a fully recovered central nervous system because this will allow you to get a stronger fight or flight response. Fight or flight response is controlled by your autonomic nervous system, which is part of your central nervous system. So what this means is if your central nervous system is fatigued, your body is not going to want to have as strong of a flight or fight response. It's not going to be able to because it is fatigued. So I'm going to real quick give you some brief information on how exactly you can make sure your central nervous system recovers. So let's say you're maxing out every day. You're trying to get this response every day. The max outs are going to fatigue your central nervous system. You don't have adrenal gland fatigue. What you have is central nervous system fatigue. Now, the recovery aspect comes in how far you stay from failure. Powerlifters are often training 4 reps from failure or at RPE 6, which means you stop when you have 4 reps left in the tank. Now, 4 reps is perfect because at 85% in exertion is when your central nervous system starts getting fatigued. So when you stop 4 reps from failure, that's about at 85% exertion. So you don't develop any central nervous system fatigue. Your central nervous system could recover after this. And therefore, you're going to have a stronger neural drive and you're going to get a better adrenal response. Now, you will normally be fine after doing RPE 6 for about a week, but your central nervous system could, after extreme days, take up to 2 weeks to recover. So keep that in mind. You just need to feel your body out, understand the difference between being fatigued and not being fatigued. Thank you for watching, boys. Subscribe, like, comment. We are back. Videos are consistent again. I'll be posting consistently. So get ready for that, boys. Time to lock in. Summer's over. We need to get disciplined. Let's go.